Admiral Kethvar of the Hegemony Defense Force watched the tactical displays with growing dread as another outer system fell to the Devourers. The ancient enemy had returned after 3,000 years of silence, their biomechanical ships consuming entire worlds and converting the matter into more vessels for their ever-expanding fleet. His aide, Captain Irel, approached with the latest casualty reports. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Tertius sector. Estimated population, 14 billion. Kethvar's forearms gestured in ritual mourning. The Hegemony had ruled 1,000 systems for millennia, but they were a peaceful confederation of scholars, traders, and artists. Their military existed primarily for ceremonial purposes and minor piracy suppression. They were utterly unprepared for total war against an enemy that viewed entire civilizations as raw materials. Any response from our alliance requests?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The crystalline confederacy was too far away to help in time. The machine intelligences of the core worlds had calculated that intervention would be inefficient. Even the warlike Saurian Empire had declined, claiming their forces were needed elsewhere. "Actually, sir," Captain Irel's translator conveyed a note of surprise. "We received one positive response. From Earth." Kethvar paused his tactical calculations. "Earth? That small world in the outer spiral. I thought they were a pre-contact civilization. They achieved faster-than-light travel 6 months ago. First contact protocols were barely completed when we sent the distress signals. According to our xenobiological files, they're a Class C species bipedal, carbon-based, relatively short-lived. Their technology is crude but functional." The Admiral's secondary brain processed this information. A single, primitive world offering assistance against the Devourers? It was almost insulting. Still, the Hegemony's situation was desperate enough that even symbolic support might boost morale among their remaining forces. "What exactly are they offering?" They said, and I quote, "We're coming. Hold the line." 3 days later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the rally point in the Gamma Centauri system. Kethvar observed their arrival through his flagship sensors, expecting to see perhaps a dozen ships, a token gesture from a species that had just learned they weren't alone in the universe. Instead, his sensors registered over 3,000 vessels. "Captain Irel?" he called, his voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. "Verify those readings." "Confirmed, sir. 3,274 human vessels, ranging from what appear to be converted civilian ships to, sir, some of these energy signatures are off the charts." The human fleet didn't arrange itself in the traditional formation patterns that galactic civilizations had used for millennia. Instead, they spread out in seemingly chaotic clusters, with smaller vessels darting between larger ones in patterns that hurt Kethvar's strategic mind to contemplate. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," announced the communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human face scarred, weathered with small predatory eyes that reminded Kethvar uncomfortably of the hunting beasts from his homeworld. The human wore what appeared to be battle armor, covered in scratches and blast marks. "Admiral Kethvar, I'm Fleet Admiral Maria Santos of the United Earth Defense Force. We're here to help." "Admiral Santos," Kethvar began carefully, "while we appreciate your gesture of support, I must warn you that the Devourers are unlike any enemy you've encountered. Perhaps your forces should remain in reserve while our remaining fleets—" "With respect, Admiral," Santos interrupted, "we didn't come here to hide in reserve. We came to end this war." Before Kethvar could respond, his tactical officer announced that Devourer forces had been detected entering the system, a massive wave of biomechanical ships that had been pursuing fleeing Hegemony civilians. 200 Devourer vessels incoming, the officer reported. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. Kethvar began calculating retreat vectors, but Admiral Santos's voice cut through his planning. All human forces, this is actual. We have hostile contacts inbound. You know the drill: no prisoners, no quarter, no mercy. Show them why we stopped fighting each other. The human fleet moved like nothing Kethvar had ever witnessed. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, they swarmed toward the approaching devourers like an angry hive of insects. Their ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible: tight turns that would liquefy most biological crews, accelerations that would crush conventional spacecraft. How are their crews surviving those G-forces? Captain Irel asked in amazement. The answer became clear as the engagement began. The humans weren't just technologically prepared for war, they were biologically and psychologically designed for it. Their ships incorporated artificial gravity systems that allowed them to perform maneuvers no other species could survive. Their weapons were crude but devastatingly effective, designed not for elegant warfare, but for maximum destruction. But more than their technology, it was their tactical doctrine that shocked Kethvar. Where other civilizations fought to minimize casualties and preserve resources, the humans fought with the assumption that every battle was potentially their last. They sacrificed damaged ships to take out multiple enemy vessels. They rammed devourer bioships with vessels packed with antimatter charges. They fought like the very survival of their species depended on every engagement. Within 2 hours, the devourer force was completely eliminated. Impossible, breathed Captain Irel. They just destroyed a force that would have required our entire remaining fleet to engage. Admiral Santos reappeared on the screen, her armor now bearing fresh scorch marks. Admiral Kethvar, we've analyzed devourer fleet movements and identified their primary staging area. We're ready to take the fight to them. Admiral, surely you need time to resupply, to tend your wounded. Our wounded are already back in action. Our ships are designed for continuous operations. Admiral, we didn't come here to help you fight a defensive war. We came to win. Kethvar realized with growing amazement that he had fundamentally misunderstood what humanity was offering. He had expected a few ships to assist in a desperate holding action. Instead, Earth had mobilized their entire civilization for total war against an enemy they had learned about less than a week ago. Admiral Santos, he asked, how many ships can your people deploy? What we brought was the first wave, the fast response force. The main fleet is still mobilizing. Santos paused, and for the first time, her expression showed something that might have been pity. Admiral, when humans learned that an enemy was consuming civilizations, we didn't just prepare to help. We prepared to ensure it never happens again. As Kethvar watched human ships organizing for a strike at the heart of devourer space, he realized that the galaxy had just witnessed the emergence of a new type of civilization. The Hegemony had called for reinforcements, expecting a few ships to help them die with dignity. Instead, Earth had arrived ready to teach the universe that some species, when threatened, don't just fight back, they fight to ensure the threat never exists again. The war would be over within a month. The Devourers, for all their ancient hunger, had never encountered a species that treated warfare not as a necessary evil, but as a science to be perfected.